Hey, my name is Sen Fantasy, and welcome back to our part 4 of our interview with Ron, who is a former M2 Bradley crewman. I encourage you guys to check out the previous parts to hear more about his experience and the M2 Bradley. For this part, we're going to be listening to his stories and as well as his experience with the Bradleys. Make sure to leave that like if you enjoyed this and subscribe to stay up to date and enjoy. How do Bradleys fit in with the Abrams in terms of the UX doctrine on that?
Okay, so like I said, everybody likes to have a buddy to gives the enemy someone to shoot at. You take a Bradley and an Abrams and you put them together, and I highly doubt there's anything on the battlefield that will touch it right now.
Mm.
Um, the Abrams just is. I was lucky enough in Korea to drive one
Oh.
when we were attached to a tank platoon. And it's like driving a motorcycle, actually. You lay back in this seat that reclines, and your throttle is your hand, like a motorcycle. And if you want to turn, you just pull the handle left or right,
Yeah.
and the gear selector's in the middle, and the brake is on the foot. But it was funny when I was driving the tank. The tank commander was yelling at me because I was halfway into a ditch on the right side.
Oh boy.
Um, and the tanker that was driving my Bradley, well, he was getting yelled at because he had the Bradley halfway off in the ditch because on the Bradley you drive on the left side.
Yeah.
So now I'm in the center. So now I'm thinking I got to be over in the on the left side of the road, or what I'm saying. So it was.
It threw you off a bit.
Oh yeah, it definitely is a. Yeah, and that thing has a lot of power.
Yeah.
The Abrams actually, I'd driven a Bradley. I can step on the gas and punch it, and after a second delay, it will take off and what I thought would get up and go. It would be like comparing a Mustang to a Pinto.
Mm.
The Bradley is slow compared to an Abrams, but the Abrams burns more gas than a Bradley can carry. Just firing up was the joke.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. But no, it goes back to combined arms tactics. Um, and the Germans during World War II, they figured out that infantry can't fight everywhere. If
Right.
they get into the open, tanks are going to kill them, armored's going to kill them. On the flip side, a tank can't fight in a restricted terrain. Cities, wood lines, trees. These are places that tanks just don't do well.
Oh yeah.
Um, you know, I always said when I was in that if you take a tank, an M1, against a Bradley and you put them out into an open area, the Abram is going to kill that Bradley every single time. Why? Because the Abram's faster, it's got a bigger main gun. The Bradley can only move, I think, 5 miles an hour to shoot a tow, and you got to be within a certain, so many meters away. It's just in the open, Abrams all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take a Bradley and an Abrams and you put them into a wood line where there's, trails and stuff like that, that Bradley will kill that Abrams every single time. And the
Mm.
reason being is the Bradley's faster in confined areas. The tank is bigger, wider, and then it's got that huge barrel up in the front. Whereas that Bradley's got that short little stubby barrel. And numerous times, training, you see Bradleys in wood lines that will outmaneuver tanks. In Germany, in Hornsfeld, which is the CMTC, which is the Central Maneuver Training Center. It's like NTC, but for in Germany.
Yeah.
Abrams got to go slow down through these trails, whereas these Bradleys and then the 113s, the Op 4 there, those guys are they have it down like a rocket science. I mean, they know when to cut their engines off so they can coast down through hills and stuff. But in a wood line, yes, Bradley will take out a tank.
For sure.
In the open, though, a tank is going to kill a Bradley. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So
I know you operated in Iraq, and so what is it like operating the Bradley in urban settings? I know you talked a little bit about that as well.
So Bradley's in urban settings. Um, while I was in Iraq, I was part of the initial invasion, March 20th through the end of August when we got back to Fort Stewart. Um, we did not lose a single Bradley
Hmm.
the whole time. Um, my company, like I said, my old company, they lost one Bradley, but that was to a T-72 uh, main gun round. But the crew was fine, and the track was actually probably repaired and didn't do a whole lot of damage. Um, the Battle of El Kifl, which is Objective Jenkins, which was the blocking position on the north side of the city of Najaf. Um, I don't know how old you are. Did you see the ground war on TV or?
I was old enough to be aware of it, but not like the fine details of what of each battle at the time. So,
So there was a giant sandstorm
hmm.
that supposedly everything was stopped and nobody was fighting and everything. Well, that was well, actually, yeah, it'll be tomorrow. 20 years ago tomorrow, on the 25th. I got woke up at 3 in the morning, and we got sent this town of El Kifl, and it was one of, I think, like 8 bridges that could support tanks across the Euphrates River. And the mission was originally given to a unit from 1st Battalion, 3rd Air Defense Artillery. They had linebacker Bradleys. A linebacker, the M6, is essentially a Bradley, but you take the tow launcher off and you put a 4-pod Stinger on there, a
Hmm.
Stinger pod. So that company went in along with a Colt team, which is a field artillery scouts, and I think the brigade reconnaissance troop might have been involved. But they got to El Kifl, and they ended up running into some overwhelming forces. So my company was called up as the quick reactionary force, and we moved out towards El Kifl. At the time, all I knew was we were told to get in the Bradleys, and we were going. So it was dark out. We started driving, and I remember looking out the back periscope because I had the headset on, the combat vehicle crewman helmet, which is the speakers, so that I could hear what the crew was talking about. Everybody else in the back of the Bradley was sleeping, and I remember looking out the periscopes, excuse me, and seeing women and children running the other way, and I was like, "Oh boy, this ain't gonna be good."
Hmm.
So we start maneuvering in, and we link up with the air defense artillery unit, and they end up being pushed off to our flank to guard our flank so we don't get outmaneuvered. And we continue on through towards El Kifl. Um, First time I ever got shot at in Iraq was in El Kifl. We dismounted, and there was a garage on the side. It's kind of a rural area, and there was just one building right there. And so our guys, we all went to that building because, in combat, everybody wants to get together and they all want to cuddle up and stay close because, it's combat.
Hmm.
So my platoon sergeant starts yelling at us from the Bradley, telling us to spread our guys out. Well, there's no cover, just a big this open parking field to our right. So I do what I get told, and I tell my guys to go lay down. Well, they get out there and they get down the prone. I see green tracers start going over their heads, and I see just AK-47 going off. Um, the
Were you in the
Bradley,
Bradley?
no, we had dismounted at this point in
Okay.
time. We had dismounted. The Bradleys had actually moved down the road, and come to find out there was an enemy mortar pit right there, that we had they had missed. The Bradleys had. I don't know how. We ended up having to clear the mortar pit and took a couple of prisoners before we moved up to the actual town of O'Kiffel. Um, we were a task force, a Bradley task force. So we had 2 Bradley infantry platoons and a tank platoon attached to us. The tank platoon had gone across the bridge at O'Kiffel. Well, 3 of the 4 tanks get across, and the Iraqis blew the bridge.
Hmm.
So the tanks were over there for about 2 hours. How was long of that? 4 hours. I can't remember off the top of my head. Time combat kind of just, it was all within the same day.
Hmm.
They ended up having to go back to essentially FaceTime back in 2003 to Fort Leavenworth I think it was Leavenworth, might have been Leonard Wood. I'm sorry, not Leonard Leavenworth. To find out if this bridge would support our vehicles. Finally, after all this debate going on, our task force commander, Lieutenant Colonel Marcone, ended up just saying screw it and just ground guided his tank across the bridge. And ended up getting over to the other side, and 36 hours we fought. In that time frame, we faced, they estimated 1,200 Iraqis against 120 roughly infantry guys with 10 Bradleys and 4 tanks.
Wow.
So what happened was we essentially took over the center part of this town to secure the bridgehead. And we had 3 Bradleys in the middle of this 4-lane downtown road. 2 lanes going in both ways. If you can think of like bus stops on the side of the road. A downtown city center, but 3 stories was the highest building.
Yeah.
And the Iraqis came at us with everything. When we got there, the sandstorm started, and we engaged. The Bradleys ended up having. I had to go out and reload the Bradleys 3 different times because we had almost gone through all of our combat ammo for the Bradleys of them shooting. And it was to see the destruction of the 25 Mike on vehicles is it does a lot of damage.
Yeah.
I was just happened to be in the Bradley that night because the crew had been up for 24 hours straight. And us dismounts we were rotating 2 hours on, meaning 2 hours we'd go pull security on the side of the Bradley down this alleyway so they didn't get shot. And then the other team would come out and they would do 2 hours. So we were doing 2 on, 2 off, back and forth. And then we had to put 2 guys into the Bradley to let the crew get some sleep.
Yeah.
So me and this guy were in the turret at the time, and I was sitting in the Bradley commander's spot, and he was in the gunner's spot. We were both sergeants. And this vehicle came down the road, and he engaged the truck with high explosive rounds at probably about 1,000 meters. And the truck ended up stopping, and we're looking through thermal sights at this point, and all we see is 3 or 4 heat signatures jump out. We can kind of make out somebody's got his hands up. Kind of looks like he might have an RPG. So the gunner pulled the trigger and sent an HE round downrange and hit the dude dead center
With the RPG.
And it was just, yeah, they hit him. Well, we hit him with a high explosive round out of the 25. Hit the guy with the RPG, and he just missed. It was through thermals, so all it was there was a guy there. There wasn't a guy there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Third platoon. Oh, no, sorry, third platoon. I was in second platoon. So first platoon. They were on the southern side of the bridgehead, um, facing towards Najaf, and they had come across some Iraqis. They were uh, Saddam Fedayeen, so militia, National Guard types,
Mm.
and they ended up engaging one guy with the 240 coax, 240 Charlie, and they fired about 50 rounds into this guy, and he fell over an embankment down the river, fell down about 50 feet, and when they looked, he was dead. They went back the next day and they saw blood marks. So the dude had dragged himself off.
What?
Um, yep, yep. Um, and then the blood marks disappeared. So we
Yeah.
don't know if someone might have come at the night and picked him up or not.
Or dragged him or something.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Also in El Kifl, we couldn't they couldn't get into one of the buildings.
Hmm.
The door was secured, and it just happened to be the bank in the town. So, as I said, we had a tank platoon attached to us, and what they did was they had the M1 pull up and put I'm not sure what round into the 120 and fire it through the doors of the bank. Yeah, blew the doors completely off the hinges. Dudes went in and cleared the bank and everything. But yeah, it's one of those things. We ended up taking Baghdad International Airport, um, and at that point in time, my platoon sergeant Bradley had broken down. The transmission had gone, so I was riding with the mechanics in their M113. So our Bradley had broken down because all the vehicles that we drew had sat on ships for years.
Oh.
They were Rolo ships, and the stuff we drew was our stockpile for in case war broke out in Iraq again. So they weren't superly well maintained. So I was on the mechanics 113, and we ended up taking Baghdad International. And to see, oh, sorry, the one rule we had was, or what we were told for the rules of engagement was not to destroy any infrastructure on the airport.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting on the mechanics 113 behind a 50 cal, sitting right off of Highway 8, I think it was. Pulling security back with all the combat trains, the support elements. And we hear tank gun going off. We hear 50 cals going off. We hear, machine guns. Company commander calls up the tank platoon. Hey, what's going on? What's your contact? What's going on? Tank lieutenant calls back, says, no, we're good, sir. We're just doing recon by fire. So essentially what they were doing is they were just driving down the outside of the wall, this giant 12-foot wall around Baghdad International, just putting random rounds into places they suspected the enemy to be. So yeah. And then so they knock the wall down and they get a hole in the wall and they come out and they're on the they pull up onto the tarmac of the airstrip. And I guess the gunner or the lead tank hit the wrong switch on his combat helmet, because instead of going over the internal communications, he broadcast over our company net. Holy crap! Do you see those guys at the plane? There's guys at the plane. Yeah, I'm engaging. Doof.
Oh.
120 round through a 737. I was about a mile away, and I was facing north towards the airfield. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, that's strange. Why is the sun coming up at 11 o'clock at night in the north? Didn't think about it. It's like, oh, someone must have hit a water, a pipe main or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, they hit a 737 and blew it up. Yep. And then we did sustainment operations. That was April 2nd. And then between then and August 1st, my company or our battalion was essentially just a QRF quick reactionary force for anywhere in Baghdad. So any unit that needed us or was having an issue where they couldn't handle the situation, they would call us up. Um, because at the time, the Iraqis didn't understand what the patches on our shoulders meant,
Hmm.
but they understood that the one with the square with the stripes on it was like the Special Republican Guard,
Oh,
and that if you shot at them, they would just kill you and everybody around you,
okay.
which was third ID, and that was our
Okay.
shoot first, ask questions later. So anytime there was any kind of a situation that was needed, they would send us in. Um, I did some missions in at the time was called Saddam City, which would later be known as Solder City, with Second Armored Cavalry Regiment out of Fort Polk, Louisiana. Um, and they were an armored cavalry regiment, but they were a light armored cavalry regiment, which didn't make any sense.
Hmm.
They were light infantry and Humvees, infantry guys. Yeah. But so we did some patrols with them, and those guys were crazy. We'd go into Solder City and we just set up a cordon around a city block, and nobody in, nobody out. And we just go in and start looking in courtyards to see if we could find any wire off of the telephone poles, because the Iraqis would go out at night and they would steal all the power wire
Oh.
and then sell it back to the government so that they could turn the power back on. So yeah,
Okay.
yeah, uh huh. So yeah, we would pull up with four Bradleys, one at each corner, and then we had our Humvees, and we'd pull in with that. We'd dismount out. This would have been in late June, July timeframe. So at that time, nobody was riding around in the Bradleys, dismounted wise.
Hmm.
It was 130 degrees during the day. It was 160, 200 degrees in the back of a Bradley. So you weren't going to be, you weren't riding around in the back of those much.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we did all kinds of interesting. I pulled guard on a place called the Yellow Cake Factory,
Hmm.
which was it's called Tarawatha Research Facility, and that's where all the weapons of mass destruction were that didn't exist.
Oh.
Um, yeah, we pulled guard on Yellow Cake, all kinds of good stuff that Saddam had. Another place was on the northwest side of Baghdad International. There was a cable facility, like storage for telephone wires and stuff like that. And one of Saddam's surprises was they'd taken 500-gallon tanks, the big, huge, like propane tank
Yeah.
looking. Yeah, they'd filled them up with chlorine gas and put them
Oh boy.
underneath ammonium nitrate, and had them set up to blow. And it was enough chlorine to kill all of Baghdad.
Hmm.
So that was our job, was to the tankers from First Armored Division. They would have four tanks during the day, and then at night they would go back to their base, and us Bradley guys would come in, us infantry guys would come in, and we'd pull security overnight.
Basically to
So
secure the site and all.
yes,
Yeah.
our orders were anybody that came in was to, depending on what they were armed with, depending on what happened. Um, if they came in unarmed, we would detain them. If they came in with machine guns or RPGs, then they were to be engaged as hostiles.
Hmm.
Um, so, yeah, we were there for 3 or 4 days. Ended up having to engage a couple of guys the second night we were there. At this point in time, we'd already traded in our Bradleys, and we were actually riding around in old M35 deuce and a half trucks
Hmm.
with sandbags on the bottom because our unit was getting ready to go back to the States soon, and our Bradleys got sent back to Kuwait. And so while we were waiting, so for like 2 months, we drove around as, just regular infantry, no Bradleys or anything. Um, but yeah, that was
Okay.
interesting.
Were there any vehicle engagements with the Bradley?
Um, yeah, actually, the Battle over the Escarpment. So when we came by Al Nazaria, um, there was a dried lake bed or something, and there was this giant 50-foot high sand wall that we were expecting the Iraqis to defend on. And as we got up over top, our task force was the lead element for 3rd Infantry Division. And our gunner engaged a couple of technical vehicles, um, Toyota Hiluxes with a, Dishka in the back.
Hmm.
Um, then couple of weeks later, when we did the river crossing at Objective Peach, our company commander and the company commander's gunner, who is the company master gunner, um, ended up getting 3 kills on BMP ones
Oh.
at the river crossing. Essentially, what happened was um, after El Kifl, we did another river crossing, an actual river crossing that we were going to go to get to Baghdad. And the Iraqis did the same thing. They tried to blow the bridge, but they only blew up half of the bridge. So when the forces came across the bridge, the mounted guys, the Bradleys, the tank companies were supposed to go left, and and my Bradley company was going to follow. Well, the tanks went right,
Oh.
and our company commander was the first Bradley in line behind the tanks, and he turns left, and there's 3 BMP-1s sitting there, and he ended up popping all 3 turrets off of them.
With Sable, right?
Yeah, he had HE round or AP rounds.
Hmm.
Yeah, he was. We're talking less than 100 meters, 150 meters away. And it ended up being the headquarters for the Medina, a regiment out of the Medina division.
Okay.
Um, and they had just shown up that day. That night was the biggest mistake of the ground war. What happened was the largest Iraqi counterattack happened. I do believe it was I want to say a mechanized battalion, or it might have been supported with a special forces detachment. Attacked 369 that night, and yeah, it was a rout. The
Hmm.
Bradleys and tanks. The Iraqis didn't know what thermals were. Um, what we were told was from the prisoners that we had taken and through the translators was that Saddam had told them that the main gun on the Bradley was fake, and that the armor on the Bradley and AK-47 would penetrate.
Oh.
So these guys were thinking they were coming up, sneaking through bushes and stuff, thinking they were hiding on us. And yeah, these guys were they decimated. I want to say it was a whole battalion, um, a battalion combat team of the Medina division. Um, just decimated everybody. And
Wow.
then called in Kiowas and Apache support to finish up whatever was left. Um, the next day, we ended up taking prisoners because, like I said, at that time it was right before this. This is right before we hit the airport. So my platoon sergeant's Bradley was broke, so I was riding with headquarters,
Hmm.
and yeah, we had to take prisoners. Most of these, they're mostly, I swear, young kids, 16, 18, 20 years old.
Wow.
That had been forced into
Conscription.
service.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Probably
the
unmotivated too.
Well, the first guys we came across in southern Iraq during the escarpment, what Saddam had done was he cleaned out all of his prisons and his jails, and he gave all these guys like 1 million dinar
Mm.
and sent them to southern Iraq and said, just slow the Americans down. Um, I, the escarpment, I think we took 1,500 prisoners. Um,
Jeez.
that battle, it was insane, the numbers. And it was just guys that, Saddam didn't want anything to do with them, so they just sent them down.
As meat grinders to stop you.
Yep.
Mm.
hmm
Mm.
But these guys that literally, you come up and you dismount off the back of the Bradley, and there's 6 guys in their white underwear and nothing else, with their hands over their heads, surrendering.
Mm.
The night of the escarpment, we had to go, our brigade reconnaissance troop, which would have been in cavalry scouts. We had a company of cavalry scouts and Humvees, and they had taken, I think it was like 60 prisoners, and
Mm.
they needed us to come and get them. So we went and drove over with our Bradleys, and it was about 10 clicks, and got over there, and literally what we did was we put them between the 2 Bradleys, and we, had the dismounts. There was my fire team and 2 Bradleys, and we walked these 60 guys for a while.
Oh,
And
so
then
they were
finally,
walking while you guys were escorting.
no, yeah, but we're walking too.
Oh, okay.
My guys,
Yeah.
we're walking with them, but the Bradleys are in front and rear,
Yep.
and it's at night. And all of a sudden, a machine gun opens up on us,
Oh.
and so we all get down, and get cover. And come to find out, it was an American convoy, that had no clue what they were, where they were, what they were doing. They just saw things moving at night, and so they decided to shoot at it. So, so we had to get the Iraqis down behind the Bradleys to get cover till these guys stopped shooting at us, so that we could move. And then finally, we were just like, you know what? I went to my platoon sergeant. I said, look, I'm not going to have my guys out here walking anymore. There's no need for it. So what we did was we just put our saw gunner, the 249, and just had him sit in the troop door of the Bradley, because on the Bradley's ramp there's a troop door,
Yep.
a big door that flops open, and he just sat right there in his seat with his saw, and he pointed it at the Iraqis, and we walked them back to the assembly area where all the other ones were till we could hand them over to the MPs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they didn't do anything. They didn't run. They didn't. They knew, where are you going to go? You're in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
You know. So,
Mm.
um, but yeah, that was most of our stuff during the invasion. There wasn't a whole lot of force on force, or Bradley on BMP, or tank on tank. Just wasn't a whole lot of it. We expected to come across that in Karbala Gap, but the Iraqis just never presented a force, because they were expecting us to attack from the north and the eastern side of the Euphrates. They didn't expect us to come up from the west.
Uh,
So,
okay. It would have
yeah.
been a lot different if it did, right? So.
Yeah. Well, the original plan. Okay, so before we went into Kuwait, or before we went into Iraq, we were briefed on everything that was going to happen. We knew every mission, every objective, what was going to happen at that objective, what units were going to take that objective, who was going to be on call to take that objective. It was all planned out. So when we moved up to originally the plan was to the Marines were going to come up from the southeast. Third ID would come up from the southwest around Baghdad, and then fourth ID would come from the north, and we would encircle Baghdad, and lay siege to the city until Saddam gave up.
Mhm.
Well, when we did that bridge crossing at Objective Peach, like I said, me and my guys were out, were part of the headquarters element at that time. So, we went scavenging to see what we could find. We came across a map for the defense of Baghdad.
Hmm.
So we knew exactly what they were thinking and which way they were thinking and how they were going to attack. So that's why the thunder runs, the very famous thunder runs through downtown Baghdad,
Yep.
those were never supposed to happen originally.
Oh.
It was because of what we found at Objective Peach that 2nd Brigade, General Blunt said, okay, 2nd Brigade, let's find out if this is true or not. Go down and find out. So, and that's how the Thunder Run came about.
Hmm.
Yep. So when I was in Kosovo, like I said, I was a Bradley gunner. And so we were out on a patrol one day. And patrols in Kosovo were a little bit different because we weren't in combat. We were in peacekeeping.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference between peacekeeping and combat is in peacekeeping, you don't tell the enemy that you're in combat. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The first time I ever got shot at was in Kosovo in '99.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were on a mission. We were doing a presence patrol. It's just 2 Bradleys. And we're driving through the countryside down this, dirt road, 2 tracks in the middle of nowhere. And I was driving because, well, I was bored and my gunner wanted to go sit in the gunner's hatch. And so there was this culvert, concrete culvert across the road. And all the dismounts were in the back sleeping because, you're a dismount. There's nothing else
Mm-hmm.
to do. You're not looking out or anything. And so I told the gunner and the driver, the gunner and the Bradley commander, hold on. And I punched it and I hit that culvert and we got the whole Bradley airborne about 3.5 feet in the air.
Mm.
And it slammed down. And when it slams down, there's 3 shocks in the front of the Bradley, but only 1 in the back. So it's like being on a school bus going over a speed bump. You get thrown up in the air.
Yep.
Oh man, they got on the internal comms and started screaming and yelling at me. Oh, it was so funny. Oh, there we go. There was so when I was in Kosovo, we were doing we had just set up Camp Bonsteel in Uroshevik, and we were heading down to this place to relieve the Greek army. And so we're going down through this town. I don't know what town it is, but all I hear is the gunner, the Bradley commander from the 2nd track, the platoon leader's wingman, and he screams, "Bronson, tank, holy shit! Turn left, shoot, 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 shoot!" We're like, "What the heck is going on?" And I slew my gun over to, I slew the gun over to the left. And our rules of engagement when we went into Kosovo was we were not allowed to point a weapon system at the Serbian military because that would have been considered a hostile threat. So if I
Yep.
pointed a gun at you, that's a hostile threat.
Mm.
Well, with Bradley, there's only one way to look, and that is to point my gun at you.
Right.
So I slew over and I look, and there's a T-72, and it's backing up into a 10-story concrete building.
Oh boy.
Just knocking down the walls, just backing up underneath to pull into the building. Main gun just sitting on the 2-2 track. If he wanted to kill us, that Bradley would have been done. But yeah, that was the first time I got a pucker factor 10 in my life. Pucker factor 10 is when you're so scared you couldn't take a pin and put it in your butthole.
Oh. Jeez.
Because your butt is so puckered up.
So did they end up seeing you, like the T-72 crew? And
Yeah,
they
they
just
saw us, and they just backed up into the building. They parked, and we just kept driving down the road because there was nothing we could do.
mm,
Um, at that point in time, the Serbians were still allowed in Kosovo, and they were leaving.
yep.
And so there was no, we couldn't do anything. Um, but yeah, the that was just crazy. Yeah, seeing a T-72 backing up into a building, and you're just like, what are you gonna do? That was always a debate that I always had when I was in, was if you come across a tank and you're inside of minimum arming distance, what do you do? Do you fire armor piercing or do you fire higher explosive? Um, Me personally, I would think high explosives,
Oh,
because
really?
armor piercing, you're not. If I'm in the front of a tank
Oh,
or
it's
the
not gonna go.
sides, my 25 is going to be like shooting bird shot.
Yeah, it's
It
tickling
ain't
it.
going to do anything. But if I fire HE at you, right? We're talking about hand grenades at
Mm.
200 rounds a minute bouncing off the side of your tank. The concussion, the shrapnel, I'm going to hit your barrel, I'm going to hit your coax, I'm going to hit your sights, I'm going to hit something. In worst case scenario, I'm going to ring your bell. That was always my mindset. So,
Wow. Well, good thing you didn't have to go through that experience.
yes.
Yeah.